It's kind of crazy that over the span of, between 5 and 7 years, JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton, the leader of the Black Panthers organization at the time, were all assassinated in such a short span of time. So it is very easy to kind of correlate government involvement with the assassination of like high value targets, but basically like in public.
Yeah, wasn't Malcolm X killed in like a theater or something like that? It was in a crowd.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast. To everybody who's been tuning in on a week-by-week basis, watching every episode, thank you so much. We're back with another hot one, literally. Mike, why don't you get us started off, man?
So, it's been a few weeks since we've shot because we've been a little busy, but, we've been monitoring the news, and naturally the political landscape has been kind of moving things along the way we always knew it would. And people are setting fire to Tesla dealerships and Teslas. And I think it's to like protest Elon Musk and how he's like cutting, the efforts with Doge and everything. But what I really wanted to talk about is how serious some of these charges are and how people are going to jail. The one thing about Tesla is the reason I kind of didn't like them, and I probably wouldn't personally own one, is they're not very private vehicles. And, as an auto accident attorney, I love when I get a client that was involved in a Tesla, because we instantly get video of everything that happened when an event happens. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but Teslas have this mode. It's called it's a security mode. I don't know the name of it, but you'll have to look it up. Senator mode or Sentry mode?
Sentry mode.
Sentry mode,
yeah.
Right? When you get close to a Tesla, it automatically starts recording who you are. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's, reasons for that because people are, catch vandalism. Anyone that's trying to break in the car, you get the information. And obviously, Tesla intended to get that so you can hand it off to police. Well, now what's happening is those people that are vandalizing and burning those cars, they're going to jail. And they're getting caught and they're getting charged with some serious charges.
So are they burning? They're burning other people's Teslas, not their own Teslas.
Other people's Teslas. They're burning the.
I don't know why I was thinking they were burning their own Teslas, and I'm like, this is such a first world thing to do, to just burn your own car.
No, but they're burning
in protest.
Not only that, they're setting fire at dealerships, and
That's
they're also
crazy.
setting the electric things, the charging ports on fire. So yeah, it's crazy. I think it's hilarious. I mean that. Just a few years ago, green energy, the new Green Deal, that was the whole rage, and Tesla was like, the godsend for the left, and now they're just burning them down. And
well, Elon was a media darling.
Yeah,
Elon was a media darling, and Tesla was a media darling. But I actually have a question for you. I did read about a lot of these cases, and I was watching some videos on them, and then I saw that Trump was also making a statement on these people who were setting fire to the dealerships and setting fire to the Tesla cars. And he was saying that these people should be labeled as terrorists. Now, do you agree with the statement? Do you agree with him going that far with that? Or do you think he's just doing it to protect his interest in Elon as well?
Interestingly enough, I was listening to another podcast about this, and they were talking about the same situation where there is no actual, according to what they said, and I haven't researched it myself, but there is no actual law in Congress, the U.S. Congress, that you can really charge a domestic terrorist, evidently. Okay. And once again, I believe there are some state laws. I don't know with certainty, but from my understanding is in order for a terrorism charge to be put against someone, it has to be tied to a foreign nation, right? So that's how you create the whole terrorism. I don't know if you've seen some of the news where they're now sending people, deporting them under, like an Alien Terrorism Act and so on and so forth. But that's kind of what they're doing. They're basically saying like, hey, these people are, committing crimes and gangs or doing, selling drugs or whatever, and they're tied to a foreign nation or come from a foreign nation or tied to an entity that's based in a foreign nation, which is how they're utilizing the terrorism and those laws to kind of deal with the immigration aspect. But as far as like criminally charging them, from my understanding, there is no way to really label them that. And here's the shitty situation, right? From what I've seen is that people on the right are opposed to those sorts of laws being put on the federal level, because think about it. I mean, let's look at the situation with, was it Virginia? Was it what was the Virginia where they had the white supremacy thing a few years ago?
Don't know what you're talking. Are you talking about Chapel Hill something?
Something like that. Remember they had like they had the torches. I'm not too sure. It was somewhere.
No, you know what? I think I remember what you're talking about.
It was somewhere up there in the north, somewhere not in Florida, thank God. But basically, if you look at it that way, so essentially the argument would be, if you try to allow a terrorism charge to be brought, they would say, okay, well, why people are being tied to a political ideology, which is, conservatism, and they're domestic terrorists. And then, I mean,
or it's just calling them domestic terrorists because they're doing something that's technically anti-government, because Elon is now part of the government. So that's actually like a point closer to creating a dictatorship, people being punished for their freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
Yeah. So, and that's where it is, like,
that's where we have to draw the line, I feel.
Do I think you should be labeled as a domestic terrorist? No. Do I think there should be, maybe some harsh penalties associated with that? And I think the current laws on the books are pretty, every criminal law, and I'm not a criminal lawyer, but every criminal law has, whether what's called a mens rea, where you have the mental ambition behind it, or the act, what is it, actus reus, where you do a certain act and it automatically qualifies for that criminal law or that criminal event. So with those two legal concepts in question, do I think there should be an elevated status for criminal terrorism, domestic terrorism, because you are setting someone's property on fire? No, I don't think so. But should you definitely get charged with arson? Yeah. Should you deal, burglary of a dwelling or whatever it is? Yeah. And, there are mandatory minimums sometimes in criminal cases for that in the federal level. So I think it's an interesting conversation.
It is an act of political protest, though, is what they're trying to do. But because, just like looting and other things like that, they should be charged with that crime, not necessarily something related to the government. Although I do love the fact that they're at least expanding on the word terrorist, even though it's not in the way that we would want, because usually it's only brown people that are labeled terrorists. But yeah.
That's an excellent point. That was literally what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
That they brought up the quote unquote terrorist word because it's politically convenient.
Yeah.
With the protest. And look, I don't condone what any of these people are doing. Mm-hmm. I think there are definitely more effective ways to go about and protest Tesla and Elon, especially after they turned the White House lawn into a used Tesla showroom. I don't think that they're terrorists. I definitely don't think that they're terrorists. I think that they're angry.
I also think they're dumb because that's in no way actually harming Elon. It's harming the people who paid for those cars.
It's also harming themselves because now insurance carriers have to pay for those damages. And not only that, insurance carriers are using these situations to also cancel coverages for certain car companies. So look, at the end of the day, there's some insurance carriers will not insure certain vehicles. And I was seeing online, there's some insurance carriers, I believe, I don't want to say any names in particular because I don't know with certainty, but based off of what I'm seeing is some people are adding certain cars to their non-insured list where they will not insure those. So you kind of screw yourself because if you set a precedent for companies that you have to utilize for insurance where they're going to say, okay, we're just not going to, not insure these vehicles. It's a hop, skip away from, other companies saying, you know what, you're a liberal, we don't want you to work here. Or, it's just stupid, in my opinion.
We need to find a better way. They need to find a better way.
Listen, I believe in laissez-faire economics, man. Let it do what it's going to do. At the end of the day, if you're liberal and you don't want to buy a Tesla, trade yours in, don't buy it. Let their stock dip the way it's going to dip. If you're conservative and you love what Elon's doing, fuck it. Go buy a Cybertruck. You may not be able to tow more than 50 miles, and then you have to unhook to then hook up your damn truck to get it powered on to then go tow another 50 miles.
And they're probably not going to get insured. I can't see a lot of, insurance companies being like gung-ho about insuring Cybertrucks.
But here's the thing. It creates a market, right? So where one person's not willing to assume that risk, there's going to be an insurance company out there that'll say, hey, we'll insure you and we're going to charge you money for it.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those are going to be the ones that get lobbyists to go and, criminally prosecute, pursue. Listen, if you intentionally, I don't think a lot of people know this, but insurance companies go after you when you cause damages to another person. We've represented people where they have either lent someone their car and that person caused an accident, and then the person they hit's insurance pays to, either deal with the damages or so on and so forth. They then go sue the person that lent the car out for the damages. And in Florida, I've seen it where they will cancel they'll literally like cancel your driver's license, revoke your driving privileges, and like you'll be on the hook for a judgment for a shit ton of money. And it becomes a situation where you become uninsurable too. So it's like there's repercussions when you mess with insurance companies. They will bite back, and the laws are now being changed to favor them. Insurance companies want to hold on to their money. So, that's the one thing I'll say is don't mess with insurance companies unless you're a lawyer and you're suing them for things they actually did, because now the laws are being manipulated in their favor to allow them the opportunity to go after people. So,
and I'm happy that you said that the best way to get back at them is economically, because we've seen that firsthand, whether it's like a smaller company like MyPillow with Mike Lindell and people boycotting that and taking it off of all of like the mainstream networks, or a major corporation like Target.
Or Disney.
Disney, and even more recently, Budweiser, when people thought that they were going too woke. A lot of the conservatives across the country, or people who lean more conservative, they started boycotting Budweiser very heavily, and it affected that stock, quite substantially.
It impacted everything. But if you look at the turn, and I think it's amazing to watch the Budweiser situation play out, man. We went from a Budweiser that was, they were just doing the dance of what corporations do, right? Do I think they were going too woke? Probably not. Do I think they were just being, were they pandering and trying to get a new market? Yes. But that goes to show how gullible certain movements are, right? Budweiser was trying to play on the LGBTQ market, and they gambled and they lost. I mean, realistically, it was a market that was worth going after from a company's perspective. If I can get even a fraction of a market, that's a profit for me. But realistically, look at the advancements it's made in Budweiser. We went from Kid Rock shooting, a bunch of Budweiser cases, to people not buying their drinks, to boycotting them, to now they hired Shane Gillis, which was canceled because of, some shady, or not shady, but some like questionable comments that he made in a podcast. They hired him as their spokesperson, and they were on Kill Tony. They were back on the Super Bowl ads, and their ads are, online with what we used to see back in the 90s, where, it's more just America, America, America. Like, look, it's a self-correction, right? You got to stay in your lane. People don't want to drink, Budweiser out of a wine glass. They just want it in an ice cold mug and drink it. You know what I'm saying? That it's a certain market. You just got to stay in your lane sometimes.
Well, people also don't want politics tied to their product.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays, especially here in the U.S., ideology and economics are so closely tied to each other.
Yeah.
So a company like Budweiser, it's kind of like a microcosm of kind of what goes on in corporate America, because you're right. I don't think that these companies mean anything bad by trying to go after another segment of the market. But, people are very, very judgmental. And when they see something, and because you hit the nail on the head, even with like that Dylan Mulvaney scandal that Budweiser was going through, where they were just trying to get another segment of the market. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
Who fucking cares? But
I feel like it ended up kind of just ended up biting them in the ass, because like they're pandering, right?
Yeah.
And you think to a certain extent, like with marketing, like your consumers aren't stupid, right? So like you're trying to pander to this group who sees it as just like transparently pandering, and then you've alienated your key
base.
demographic base, and you've basically just done nothing except dig yourself a hole.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's, as a business owner, the one thing I'll say is, listen, I don't want anyone to ever walk through my door and feel like they're not going to get a fair shake at representation because of who their political ideology is. And I'm the same way. When I walk through a business, if I want to wear, a MAGA hat, if I want to wear a Biden hat, if I want to drive a Prius that's, got Elon all over it, or if I want to drive a Prius with a diesel in it, I want to be able to go somewhere and just enjoy their product. Right. I think that's what makes America the greatest place, is that we have that freedom of expression, that we should be able to go out and interact with people with opposing views. And even if we don't agree with one another, we can sit down, have a conversation, and it should be to where we can, walk away and
Maintain
disagree.
some form of respect.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's not like I sit around, like, thinking, like, I wonder what Budweiser's stance is on the LGBTQIA community. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like some companies just don't need to, like, don't enter the chat.
Yeah.
Like, stay in your lane, like you
look,
said.
that's like, I remember when, like, Jaeger bombs were a thing.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Like, imagine if, like, Jaeger bombs went woke and that was a whole, like, thing. Just some things you just don't need. Like,
It's just
shit doesn't need
unnecessary to
change,
take a stance sometimes.
Yeah, like, it's so weird. And I think as a business, I think the one thing I have enjoyed seeing is a lot of businesses are realizing, like, whoa, let's step back from politics and let's just get down to doing what we do. Let's make beer. Let's make burgers.
Providing a good product for consumers.
And the people that want to abstain because of, their ties to one thing or another, those people will find a way to be like, oh, okay, so their parent company believes in this and X, Y, Z, and so I'm not going to buy this product. You don't have to go out of your way to be like, we're pro this or anti that.
Talking about believing in things, do you believe in conspiracy theories?
Yes and no.
Do you believe the government killed JFK?
I don't know.
Well, you can read the JFK files, which have been released.
I tried to download them. It took forever.
So supposedly, National Archives, they're still going through and I don't know too much about the JFK situation. I started reading through some of it, and looking at some videos on some of it. But basically, it's a really weird chain of events, right? I think it's Lee Harvey Oswald, shot JFK, you know, while he was in Texas, in an open car motorcade. I don't know who the thought it was a good idea to put the president of the United States in a goddamn convertible and drive him down, like the dumbest person in the history of the U.S. But whatever.
Or maybe that was part of the staging.
It's part of the conspiracy. That's what I'm getting to. So let's check this out. Lee Harvey Oswald gets arrested.
Yeah.
And supposedly prior to his arrest, there's documents in the JFK files that came out that said that there was a guy that basically told the FBI, hey, this guy, Lee Harvey Oswald, went to Russia. He was trying to get into the KGB, and supposedly the KGB was like, nah, you're not good enough for us or some shit. And they sent him back. But there was like something that came out where it was known that he was going to an assassination attempt in Texas on some event. So this was known well beforehand. All that stuff was sealed. It was like closed away. No one ever got to see it. Then when Lee Harvey Oswald got arrested, he then got shot and killed, I think, the next day. And then they did like a hurry up, type offense investigation saying, yeah, he was the only person that did it. Case closed.
Oh, so you think they killed him so that he wouldn't be able to expose the conspiracy?
So no, they're basically saying that, he was in on it. They knew it was going to happen. And they basically, like, that's what they're saying is
like
that
kind of an Epstein situation.
Was it LBJ? LBJ took over after. Yeah. So they're saying like LBJ had something to do with it. Really? What's even weirder is that as soon as all this stuff, this stuff came out, everything was sealed through court order. And I think that's what National Archives is still dealing with. From what I understand, they're still dealing with trying to unseal certain documents that are sealed by court order. Mm-hmm. So it goes to question. Same thing with MLK. The MLK files have been released. Obviously the government thought MLK was an agitator for his movement. Mm-hmm. And obviously everyone believes that the government had something to do with his assassination attempt. I mean, when you see this, does it make you feel like, how does it make you feel?
It's kind of crazy that over the span of, between 5 and 7 years, JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton, the leader of the Black Panthers organization at the time, were all assassinated.
Yeah.
In such a short span of time. So it is very easy to kind of correlate government involvement with the assassination of like high value targets. And I think that's why the beast has been feeding itself for the past like 4 or 5 decades, because people have been wondering like, how could we have allowed like all of these major figures over such a short span of time be assassinated, and not like off the grid, but
these are public,
but basically like in public.
Yeah. Wasn't Malcolm X killed in like a theater or something like that? It was in a crowd.
Yeah.
Goes to show you, man, how, like, I don't understand. What really makes me wonder is like, how did we get to where the bureaucracy is even being, why is there such a lack of transparency in the federal government that bureaucracy can allow this? You know what I'm saying? Because basically that's what happens. We vote people into Congress. Congress then takes our money, dishes it out to wherever, and the bureaucrats do with it what they please. And you have your backdoor conversations that things happen. I mean, one of the biggest things I'm a proponent of is transparency, right? Whether or not I agree with some of the things that DOJ is going and investigating and what they're doing and how they're doing it, I don't necessarily agree with all of it. But the concept that I do agree in is transparency. And I believe, listen, when I find out a government agency exists and is expending money that really is kind of questionable, I want to know a little bit more why that exists. When I find out politicians that started nonprofits suddenly got grants of billions of dollars or millions of dollars, and there's no accounting of it, no, nothing like holding them to what they should do with that money. I got a problem with that.
And I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. My perspective on it is that if the government didn't have anything to hide on any of these major assassinations that have taken place, why lock the files away?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Why lock the files away? Like, if you had no involvement with it and you weren't trying to hide anything as the U.S. government, why keep the files under wraps for as long as you have?
And that's the thing. They don't want us to question it. That's why they don't release this information, because as soon as it is released, obviously there's going to be questions from the public.
But it's like, here's the stupid thing, right? You don't release the information, conspiracy theories swirl, right?
Yeah.
Look, same thing with like Area 51, bro. Everyone thinks like there's aliens there. Realistically,
Lyndon Johnson definitely had a lot to do with that. So he launched a lot of that once he became interim president.
Yeah.
After JFK's assassination.
Yeah. And that probably to distract,
Was it to distract, or was that so that he could start that initiative?
Maybe. But at the end of the day, look, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, if the government were more transparent, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to just be like, yo, what the f going on? And are there aliens? And it's a yes, check no. Do you like me? Check yes, check
Yeah.
It's simple, dude. Listen, if there's aliens, tell me. I'll stop praying to Jesus, Like, we'll figure it the out.
Have either of you guys gotten a chance to go through the files that they have released?
No, dude.
Has any
It's
new information come out?
lot.
We're so
A
busy
lot.
at work.
What, you told me one of them was like 20,000 pages? I don't have time to
Yeah,
do
that's
that.
that's
Yeah,
insane,
like,
man.
I don't have time to read in my free time because I read so much at
I'm
work.
legitimately going to probably just download the entire PDF, throw it into ChatGPT and be like, tell me whether or not the government killed JFK.
Throw it into Speechify and like make an audiobook.
But what's crazy is that how do you know that what they have released is everything that they have completely? Because I can only assume that at that time when some of these movements were taking place behind the scenes, that that's not going to be logged, or the moment that it is logged, they're immediately burning the paperwork.
Well, so here's the weirdest part about it is there is all the things in which the dates that any of these documents would have been able to have been released were such long periods from when the event happened that anyone alive would have been dead. A lot of the people that wrote all that stuff are dead. So we can't question them, and it's like, well, even if they were involved, it's kind of like the government helped cover it up to where even if they did do it, you can't do anything about it.
And that's such a good point, Josh, because like, what if now they're releasing what they want us to think happened?
Look, at the end of the day, no matter who the party is, don't trust them, because I'm sorry, like, you can't trust government.
They're all part of the same system.
Yeah, I believe everyone's self-interested, right? And I learned, I read I don't know where I heard it, but I read somewhere like, look, even if you go out and you do a good deed for another person, right? You're not doing it necessarily because you want to do it for that person. You're doing it to satisfy that internal feeling of, I did something good for another person. Mm-hmm. Self-interest, right? So like, at the end of the day, every single person is going to act on self-interest. Now, whether or not that self-interest is good and puts good out, or negative and, does damage, it's totally up to that.
Yeah.
It's the repercussions of that person's actions. But
oh my God, you know what the quickest way to figure that out is too?
What?
And I hate this. When someone holds the door open for you and you walk through and then they yell at you to say thank you. And it's like, I could have opened the door myself. Why do I need to thank you? Or what if I didn't get a chance to say thank you yet? That is the easiest way to determine whether or not that was a self-interested action.
that is true.
You guys actually brought something up that reminded me of something that's going on right now that we don't have written down, which is Trump, because you mentioned self-interest. So Trump, he recently filed a lawsuit, or he brought, or I don't know if it was a lawsuit or if it's something that he's trying to settle with major corporate attorneys. But he basically filed something, and you can look that up right now, Mike, against corporate attorneys like across America that were working on cases against him. And one of these major attorneys or major law firms, Paul Weiss, they settled with the Trump administration, and now a lot of these major corporate law firms, these high-powered law firms, are now trying to hire lawyers that they may deem more conservative, so as to not affect what's going to happen to their law firms.
I do recall that he's basically so there was a bunch of law firms that supposedly they filed frivolous suits against him, and basically that's what it was. I remember hearing about that.
Or were these suits filed before his presidency?
I think so. I think it was.
Then I thought those can still go through then.
No, but a lot of them, I think they've either been dismissed. I don't know too much about it, but from what I heard, he's encouraging them to allow sanctions against people that file frivolous suits, which, to be fair, look, if you weaponize a lawsuit, the craziest thing about a lawsuit is I think it should be what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? I think if you file a lawsuit, you should be held liable for sanctions if it was a meritless, frivolous lawsuit. But that goes both ways. I think the federal government should also be able to be sanctioned for filing frivolous lawsuits and criminal charges.
So what do you think? So how do you think it might affect the law field at large, right? With the government getting involved now with some of these firms, because now that one of these major firms have settled, right? Like Paul Weiss, which is one of the top corporate law firms, across the U.S. A lot of like these other law firms are kind of scared that the government is now going to start going after political opponents.
Listen, man. I mean, I think it's part of the game, man. You fuck around, you find out, and at the end of the day, this is why you as an attorney, when I take a case in, I look at it and I assess it. And look, we've had people that left bad Google reviews on us because we took their case, and when I looked at it, I said it was absolute garbage, or they're just not, good clients, and the facts aren't what they told us they were. And we will drop a case, and they are upset and butthurt about it. But we have a code that we try to hold. We only bring cases that we know are relevant. Listen, man, I think that should be the standard that should be upheld. And if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, and I'm telling you this, I've been working in law firms since I was 17 years old. I've seen the way the field operates, especially in personal injury cases. There's cases we knew, that the law in Florida previously allowed us to file lawsuits. If our client was not 100% at fault, we could have brought a recovery for him. Even if it's 2% or 1% of a recovery. The way we as lawyers used to think about it is, listen, yeah, our client caused some of this, but if we can get a little coverage, we'll get a little bit of a check. We had no incentive to not continue with a lawsuit. Now the law has changed to where in order for us to get a recovery, if our client's more than 50% at fault, even it's 50.01, I believe it is, that technically we get nothing. You see what I'm saying? So it's a risk reward analysis for us. And I think there needs to be that incentive when you're dealing with lawyers, especially because lawyers at the end of the day, we're business people, right? We look at people's cases. We look at situations and we're like, all right, how can we monetize this? Not only for our clients, but also for us and the prestige of our firm. When I take a case, I'll tell you, man, I've taken some cases that I've seen the light at the end of the tunnel. And when it comes to marketing, and we've taken them and we've been successful. And now I can say, yeah, I did this. Did I necessarily agree with, what my client was asking for? No. But at the end of the day, it's up to, a jury or an adjuster or someone to tell me I'm wrong and, tell my client they're wrong. So ultimately, I do think we as attorneys should be put on the hook for liability for bringing cases. But if there's merit to those cases, I mean, we have rules and stuff that allow us to be alleviated of that liability, which is, important too. So you can't just hold people to the grinder just because they choose to sue someone, right? People wouldn't get their day in court.
But there are also firms that will, there's always, I feel like, a firm that might find merit to your case. So just because we don't, it doesn't mean that someone else might not. But I also think, just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, I think something that's really, really important that I think clients need to understand is we have just as much of a choice to take on your case as, you choosing us as your firm. Because sometimes people just think because they like us and they're like, okay, we're ready to sign, and we decide there's no merit to their case. They're like, well, you're my lawyer. Why aren't you doing, X, Y, Z? Like, we get to make that decision just as much. We're allowed to fire clients, for any legitimate reason as well.
Yeah, and I've encountered cases where clients are misleading. They lie. They don't tell the truth to us, and I'll fire them in a heartbeat. Or they try to get me to help them lie or mislead the court. I don't deal with that shit either. I know there's a stereotype that lawyers are liars. The one thing I never want to be accused of is being a liar, and I put my words on paper for that reason. I will always write down and put anything in writing because I'm a man of my word, and I want my words to mean something. So I try not to lie, but that's the stereotype we deal with.
I mean, honestly, we get a bad rap for no reason because everyone wants to talk shit about them until you need a lawyer. And then they're like, oh my God, can you help me? Can you help me? It's like,
well, we're also in that never ending cycle where we're in a combative role, right? So one party's always going to hate us, you know? No, I think we have over 1,000 cases logged through our system since we've opened this practice. That means I've dealt with 2,000 people at a minimum. That means at least 1,000 people me, bro. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, on the other spectrum, you have 1,000 that love you. So
I love them. I love you guys.
So don't lie to your attorneys.
All right. So, to bring things a little bit to home.
You lied to me.
Is that the lyrics?
Those are the lyrics.
God damn, perfect.
Damn, that was a perfect segue.
Perfect.
Thank
segue.
you. Can we throw some auto tune on that?
Mark Morrison got arrested, I think a few days ago I think it was somewhere in Palm Beach at a wine bar.
Return of the Mack.
Return of the Mack. That's one of my favorite songs.
It's a banger.
It really is.
It is a banger.
It encapsulates the 90s. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
But supposedly he was at a wine bar, and I guess the manager of the wine bar.
Did they start playing the song?
Oh, that would be
he was probably like, I'm so sick of this.
Slap.
What did Five Finger say to the face?
I don't know if he slapped the guy or if he pushed him away, but that somehow he got arrested, and they are his attorney. I saw something. I don't know who his attorney is, but they said that it was racially motivated. And what are your thoughts on that sort of argument / defense and the situation?
I mean, I don't know exactly what transpired, right? So the details are still to come, or all of the hard details are still to come. But all I'll say is, anytime alcohol is involved, the end result isn't usually great.
So are they saying his actions were racially motivated?
No, they're saying that
the manager's actions?
I guess the manager might have done something racially motivated, which aggravated him, which then led him to causing a scene and pushing the guy. I mean, look, at the end of the day, as one person to another, we live in a civilized society. You should not push or put hands on another person.
Yeah.
Absent you defending yourself.
Yeah.
And,
these types of cases, we know how they go. It's usually, it may have some racist racial undertones. It may well have that. But trying to prove that in a constitutional way is a very high bar.
Well, here's the other thing is that, so if you're saying that it was a race, because
we get calls all day that are like, they're being racist.
Yeah,
like, I want to sue them.
me.
They're discriminating against me. It's like, okay, can you explain the situation? And it's rarely ever anything that we can actually litigate.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it's just not worth the headache. But like realistically, if you think about this logically, okay, so if you're saying it's racism, well, you have a discrimination claim against the business. Still doesn't give you the right to strike or harm someone, because words do not equate to violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like if I say I'm going to hit you, unless I go back and show the actual like intent to go hit you, if you just punch me in the face, if I have my hands behind my back and say I'm going to hit you and you punch me in the face, well, clearly I wasn't going to hit you, and the words that I said were just. So yeah, I said I was going to hit you, but you hit me. I think, in the simplest terms, you don't have a reason to hit me since you shouldn't have been, anticipating that I was going to hit you. But
and that's still not a defense to battery.
It's still not a defense to battery.
As someone who was involved in the restaurant industry for many years and, was running restaurants for many years, I think most of these situations transpire not due to racial motivation, but due to someone's ego being affected. So again, I don't know what went on exactly, but I've definitely seen quite a few situations inside of my own establishments where like you have a celebrity come in or somebody of like a higher status come in, and they immediately expect like a higher level of service, or for people to be a little bit more on top of them because like they're inside of the restaurant. So again, I don't know exactly what transpired here. Maybe there was some sort of racial
Do you think he came into the
motivation.
restaurant like, "Hey, do you know who I am?" Because I don't know what this guy looks like. I just know he has the one hit song.
But
he'd be like, "Play the song."
But
he walks
sometimes,
around with the fucking JBL speaker playing the song.
But sometimes what ends up happening is like you might not know who that person is, right?
Yeah.
You might not know who that person is, and maybe due to the restaurant being crowded or them not having the bandwidth to service people like the way that they need to, you might feel like they're not being as on top of the service as they usually need to be. And not saying that like maybe he has the ego where he's like, oh, like, do you know who I am? But there comes a point in time where like maybe like, someone said something to him and he's like, man, like, I'm
Mark Morrison.
Man, I'm Mark Morrison, dude. I had Return of the Mack in 1996, the song in 1996,
Now that's what they call me 3. That's what I was on, baby.
So again, the detail,
no.
That's what I call music.
Now that's what I call music. My bad. Edit that.
Kids Bop 49.
I was on fucking Kids Bop 49, motherfucker.
I want to play one of those advertisements for people who are too young to know what we're talking about. The late night advertisements.
Dude, I go
$19.99 plus shipping and handling.
I go on Apple Music and I find now that's what I call music. And
now that's what I call music, man.
I add them. Yeah, I add
those are the classic ads,
dude.
Man.
Hanson. Yeah. Fucking.
That was like the OG mixtapes.
Dude. Do you remember back in the day, like when you used to take, did you ever do that where you used to get a tape and like record over and make your own mixtape?
I did it once or twice, but I remember the last time I tried to do that, I was trying to make my own mixtape, and I messed up, and I rewrote like the entire thing, and I got so frustrated.
You hit rewind.
Yeah, I hit rewind.
Yeah, that was before me even. I burned CDs.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So
I'm the LimeWire era.
You remember Milli Vanilli?
I do remember.
You don't know Milli Vanilli.
I know of them.
Yeah, because of the
Scandal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my dad used to have Milli Vanilli like on the radio cassette player, and we used to have a 1993 Ford Aerostar. You remember the white van?
I do remember the white van.
That thing was horrible. So anyway, he had this Milli Vanilli, and I'll never forget it. I've never heard "Blame It on the Rain" and the other "Girl, You Know It's True" so much in my entire life.
It's true.
So he used to play this all the time. And I remember I was like, because I used to know how you could like rewind the tapes and then record over it. I was literally like, there was one day I was so tired of this tape. I was like, man, I just want to take that tape and record farts on it. So my dad will put it in and it'll just be like fart noises.
Don't tell me that's
dude.
what.
No, I couldn't. I think we actually threw it out the goddamn window.
Okay.
I remember specifically taking a VCR tape and wanting to tape a Power Rangers episode, and I mistakenly taped over my part of my communion, and my mom wanted to show to show a family member what was going on during this communion.
Hold on, please tell me like how did the communion start? Like what is a communion? I've never done a communion.
Well, I mean, it's essentially like your first communion. Like you're getting bread, you're getting like
dude.
wine.
Please tell me like you got the bread and then right as you were putting it in your mouth, it's orphan time.
No. I mean, it was basically that. Like it was somewhere in the midst of the ceremony.
Josh morphed into the White Ranger.
No, dude. It was somewhere in the middle of the ceremony where, toward the end, or something was going on, and like one of my family members was on screen, and then it immediately transitioned to the Putty Rangers going on screen, and my mom.
Megazord pops
Megazord,
out.
and my mom was like, "What?" My mom was like, "What the hell is this?"
Please tell me you still have that shit.
I think I'll do it. Oh man, I got my ass whooped, dude. I got my ass whooped.
That's
Joshua.
amazing.
Joshua Bradley,
Go Power Rangers.
you're gonna get your ass whooped.
It's funny now, but at the time as a kid, like your heart is in your stomach, and you're just like, holy, I got an ass whooping coming to me, boy.
Yo, that.
What was your favorite Ranger?
Man, the Red Ranger, man.
Yeah.
I love the Red
Jason?
Ranger, Jason. Yeah.
So,
I love the Red Ranger. I love the Zach was cool. The Black Ranger. Every young boy's first crush was Kimberly.
yeah,
I was the
Ranger.
Pink Ranger for a number of Halloweens.
Yeah, man.
Kimberly.
I loved Kimberly, man.
I mean, I liked Tommy when he was the Green Ranger.
Oh, Tommy was
and
always
the
yeah.
White Ranger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tommy was cool, man.
I just thought he was a cool dude.
Yeah.
But when that what with the green dragon,
Rest in peace, Jason David.
was it the green dragon Zoid where he can
Yeah.
play that flute?
Yeah.
That shit hit, bro.
It did. Yeah, he's playing the flute from heaven, man. He ended up passing away a few years ago. So
Wasn't it drugs?
no, I think he committed suicide.
I don't think he went to heaven then.
All right.
Just kidding.
Yeah, he might not be in heaven.
Yeah,
but-
well, he's somewhere. Good luck to you, buddy.
yeah. Good luck to you, man. Good luck to you wherever
All right,
you are.
Well, we've gone off on our tangent, but we didn't talk about Diddy this time or Kanye.
Or Kanye.
And I'd like to formally say before we wrap this up, I've officially, kind of really questioned whether or not I want to listen to Kanye anymore. But I heard he dropped a new album and it's fire as shit, so I'm going to listen to it. So we all should comment on that next time.
We almost went an entire episode without mentioning Diddy.
Yeah,
or
not going to
Kanye.
happen, buddy. I'm not going to let that happen.
Well, hey, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Only Lawsuits podcast. If you like what you see, please watch and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments below. And, thanks again to all the listeners across the globe. Until next time.
Peace.
Bye.